Welcome to the Autoimmune Campfire.
Join us, coaches Helen and Nona, for honest, heartfelt conversations around living well with a chronic condition.
Come sit at our campfire. There's a chair waiting for you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of the Autoimmune Campfire. And hello, Helen. Hello.
Yes, hello, Nona. Episode 10, we're into double digits. Look at that.
Wow.
And today we are talking about approaching pain differently.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about mindfulness and breathing in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into it, Nona, tell me about your weekend.
Oh my gosh, what did I do this weekend? I had a really quiet weekend. I did a lot of arting. So here, I'll show you what I did. Nobody on the recording, on the just the recording, will be able to see it, so they'll have to watch YouTube. Oh, it did a hippo.
Magnificent hippo. Oh, look at those eyes, Nona.
So I spent way too much time working on the hippo. That's what I did this weekend. How about you, Helen?
Lovely. Yeah, I had a relatively sort of a quiet and spacious weekend, but also lots of things getting ready for hosting a party this weekend and family Thanksgiving and all of those bits and pieces. So, and also I want to give a huge shout out to my lovely friend and neighbor, Nitsa, because I've been going through all these different health challenges, and she drove me to a CT scan and was just the best company and just so lovely, which was wonderful because I was trying to chug bottles of barium. And I think if I'd been driving, I would have lost it on the steering wheel. So, so her wonderful presence. So I just want to say there's been some hard stuff, but also I'm really grateful. It's like both and,
Yeah, absolutely. It's always the both and. It is
right?
always the both and. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this week we are going to talk about pain, as Helen said. And this is can be a really challenging topic, right? Like some people don't want to admit they're in pain, and some people kind of collapse into pain. And oftentimes we are just kind of consumed by it, if especially when we have autoimmune conditions that contribute to pain, which I know MS does. I know RA does. I know a lot of autoimmune conditions. Pain is a featured um, a featured part of it. So we wanted to talk about pain, the most current pain science, and also like what we know about self-care as far as mindfulness practices and the breath, and how that can support us with our pain journeys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Because we were talking about this last week in getting prepared for our call, and we talked about that concept of how we breathe in our bodies impacts our health. And it's not necessarily something that you may hear at your doctor's office, maybe. But also, what I would say is there's so much. I mean, I feel like over the years, it used to be just like, oh, that's the hippie stuff, right? And now we've got really good, solid data on mindfulness and the impacts of mindfulness. Even if you can imagine people putting Buddhist monks into functional MRI machines and looking at their brains and how it's impacted their brains in a positive way. So um, I just want to throw that out there for those who are like, oh, this isn't for me.
Mhm. Right. Or that mindfulness is something very particular. So we're talking about sort of the larger picture of what mindfulness really is. So do you wanna share your quote from with all of us? It's from John Kabat-Zinn. Go ahead.
Yeah. John Kabat-Zinn, who has written many, many books on mindfulness. He said, mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. This kind of attention nurtures our greater awareness. clarity, and acceptance of present moment reality. It wakes us up to the fact that our lives unfold only in moments. And if we're not fully present for any of those moments, we may not only miss out what's valuable in our lives, but also fail to realize the richness and depth of possibilities for growth and transformation.
Mm.
It's in.
That is a fantastic quote. I also just want to say along those lines that one of the first books I actually bought about pain was Full Catastrophe Living
Living.
by John Kabat-Zinn.
Yep, it's in.
I
Yeah.
I mean, my copy of that book is like dog it's so old and dog-eared, but it is a fantastic, fantastic book.
Yes.
So we should probably put a link to that in the resources for
Yep.
people who
On it.
want to think about pain. And that was even before we had a lot of really good pain science, that book was written.
Well, Nona, why don't you can you take us through a little bit of the pain science, the latest in pain science? Because you've been educating me on this and it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is really interesting. And it's not something that we hear a lot about because doctors prescribe pain medication and and that's what they do and they do it well. And there are lots of things that you can do from a medication perspective for pain. But one of the things that in my therapeutic yoga training, we had a whole week about the most recent pain science because of course most people come to therapeutic yoga because they're experiencing some kind of pain. And so, what I learned and what has been just fascinating to me is that we have basically like two buckets, right? Like, we have a bucket of stress, we have our stress bucket, and then we also have our support bucket. And actually, that's language from Susan Pierce Thompson. Just so you know, like it's not the way that they talk about it in the pain science, but it really captures the idea. So when the stress bucket is higher than our support bucket, it leads to something that's really interesting. So I'm going to back up a little bit and say a few things about the body. So, for instance, Helen, you've got something on your wrist, yeah, because you're having some pain in your hand. And so our normal and our very natural human reaction is to be like, there's something wrong with my hand. There's something broken here in my hand. Totally reasonable to think that because that's where the pain is. So we don't have pain receptors anywhere in the body. There are no pain receptors. I really want you to like take that in. Like, wow, what? But
Wait,
what we
what?
do
Yeah.
have yeah, it's like, "What? Are you kidding?" What we do have are danger receptors, threat receptors all over our body. So, going back to that support and that stress bucket, when your stress bucket is high, there's something happening in your body that's like, "Danger, danger, danger, danger," and those impulses are going to your spinal cord, and sometimes your spinal cord just stops it right there. Like, "Oh, no, we're fine. Oh, no, we're fine." But if it gets to the brain, then the brain makes a determination, is there actual threat? And then it sends a pain signal. And then it sends a pain signal.
And that blew my mind. As a physiologist, I was like, wait, there are receptors. But you're right, it's stretch, it's all sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the thing that's really interesting about that, and I wanna be really clear, okay, because I've had people this is what we do, okay? Like, if you have a broken wrist, all right, you're like, "No, there's really something wrong. There's really something wrong, that's why it hurts." Absolutely. You're having a threat in your wrist. But whether or not you've broken your wrist or not, if your threat receptors, if your stress bucket is higher than your support bucket, and your nervous system is saying danger, 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 you are going to experience pain in your body somewhere. Somewhere you're going to be having pain. So that is what actually creates this sensation of pain that we have. And we tend to think of it like, well, it's all in your head or it's real. No, it's all real. It's all real. And whether you have a broken wrist or not, if you focus on regulating your nervous system, it will likely decrease your pain. And so that is why we are here to talk about mindfulness practices and breath today, because they are such a critical support for us if we're experiencing pain. And actually, I wonder if you might be willing to share what happened for you yesterday as an example.
I was just thinking that we could really talk about that because Nona is well, so Nona is an absolute gifted. You're certified in breathwork, yoga nidra, yoga therapy. You're working on that, right? So, and a great coach and yoga therapist and yoga teacher as well, right? And CPA. Like she's just amazing. She covers she.
I just love to learn. I'm like a hungry, hungry hippo, actually, when it comes to learning. Yeah. Oh, I'm dating myself with that game, aren't I?
Oh, no, no, it came out. It came out like my kids had one. It came out. It wasn't, it came back out. I've been working with Nona to do some yoga nidra and just sort of like get back in my body, especially when I'm having like a little flare going on here now. And so Nona did some movement, some yoga therapy with me, just some movement. We sort of did a check-in, she did some movement, and then we did a nidra practice. So Nona, why don't you walk through what a nidra is for our listeners?
Yeah, so Yoga Nidra is I would call it a mindfulness practice. It's a meditation practice that's done lying down, and it takes you through it's really more like a visualization because it takes you through the different layers of the body as far as yoga is concerned. It's called the koshas. The physical body, the energetic body, the mental body, the wisdom body, and then the bliss body. So you go through all 5 layers of the body in these visualizations, and it is deeply relaxing. And I think we actually talked about Yoga Nidra in a previous episode because I was talking about how it's actually been researched for people with PTSD. So, and whether you have PTSD or not, it is an absolutely fantastic practice. And going back to what happened yesterday, so we checked in and you were on a pain scale, like you were experiencing some pain, not like maximum pain, but you were experiencing kind of some pain in various parts of your body. And just tell us what happened. You did the practice, we did a little bit of movement, we checked in. So there was connection, there was movement, there was yoga nidra, and then there was the check in at the end. So even the practice itself has a lot of things built into it that like supports the nervous system settling. So then what happened at the end for you, Helen?
So what happened at the end when you asked the same questions about where the pain scale was that I really wasn't experiencing much pain at all. In fact, I sort of flipped from on the scale of -10, 0 being neutral, and +10, I kind of gone into a +2 where I was before, like a -3. So that's quite a significant change in just an hour of therapeutic practice. And not even any hands-on or anything. We were doing this via Zoom. Really, really phenomenal. And I definitely feel like there's some absolute magic to it because I just feel so deeply rested after yoga nidra. I think we talked about it in the sleep episode, and we actually posted one of your nidras so that people could experience it for themselves. We can post it at this as well. But it's so incredibly powerful. And I remember you when you were diagnosed, one of the things you recommended an app to me and said, check this app out because a lot of that pain science and practices were in that app and the curable app. And so I keep dipping into that as well. And it's just kind of morphing my brain from what I thought I believed as a physiologist to what is actual currently in our awareness in terms of the facts. Research changes all the time because more research is added, and so our knowledge is extended. So, yeah, anyway, it was fantastic. Known as fantastic, just in
Oh,
case anybody hasn't
and
noticed.
you're we are all fantastic, all of us here, fantastic. Richard, you too, our producer, fantastic.
Yes.
One of the things I wanna come back to is is the breath and my as a mindfulness practice that can support us. So Nidra has a breath practice within it. But talk a little bit about your perception of the breath, especially given your story with your own breathing. Like, how has being with the breath supported you in your pain journey?
Oh, it's been huge. It's been huge. Even from years ago when we did breath work together before I had this condition and you had your condition, right? Um, I think one of the things that I learned growing up is I'm a big breath holder, and I also have a lot of allergies. So often I'm a mouth breather because I have no access to my nose, and so um, just noticing that, so even doing more yoga was okay, so breathe in through my nose, like breathe out sort of long and slow through my mouth was sometimes that was really hard. It just wasn't accessible to me. And I think the other thing that when I think about I sometimes I overdo it, right? So, that whole thing that we talked about, sometimes, I know you can do more, but sometimes can you do less? So you'd say, okay, like breathe into your belly. And I'd be like forcing my belly out, like forcing it out. And then I'm like, this is making me feel really uncomfortable. And like, it would be almost, um, it wasn't helpful because I was pushing too hard and not listening to my body. So the breath work has been a really helpful thing to actually really notice in the moment, what am I doing? Am I pushing too hard or am I holding my breath? So last week I had my 6 monthly dental cleaning, and I don't know, somebody puts metal implements in your mouth and is scraping away. I just don't enjoy it. Okay. So I noticed that I kept holding my breath. And then I started holding my own hand and letting my shoulders drop, breathing in. And my PT says, breathe into your underwear, like breathing down into my, my torso. And I was like, oh, wow, this stuff really works. But one of the things I love that you said when we were doing our prep session was breathing is the only thing that we do automatically in our body and that we can change, which I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes." We don't often think about breathing, so if we're not noticing that we're holding our breath, we're just holding our breath until we sort of gasp for air.
Right, right, right.
Tell me about how it was so tell me about what is your history coming into this learning about pain science and mindfulness?
Well, going to the breath work, I was having the reason I even trained, this is why I do so many things because something happens. And my husband and I he had gone off to Burundi and I had moved here with my daughter and my dog. He was going into an active, like, kind of war zone. I mean, it was like kind of a slow train to a civil war was happening and it was really bad. And so Claire and I came back here. We had sold our cars, like all of our stuff was in storage, and what I found was that I was my what everything was setting me off. Like my nervous system, like I would call that like my nervous system was super dysregulated. I had zero, very little ability to manage what came at me. Let's just put it that way. And I was like, I should do a breathwork facilitator training. Because doesn't everybody do that? I mean, come on. So, I embarked on this year-long training. Gosh, when was that, Helen? It was 8 years ago? 8, 9 years
It
ago?
was
It's
before I
been a
had,
long time.
RA. Mhm. Your body is whispering secrets to you about the life you're here to live. Decode the messages about the joy you're meant to experience despite, or maybe because of, the condition that upended everything you thought you knew. If you're ready to make magic and meaning of your one wild and precious life, learn more about coaching with Nona at nonajordan.com.
Yeah, so I took this training, and what I found was, like, over time it took time. It wasn't immediate. That over the course of this training and really committing to doing this breath work, that my nervous system was I had more space. Like when things happened, I wasn't feeling as reactive. And one of the most surprising things that happened for me, not promising this to anybody, and the kind of breath work that I learned wasn't like the kind of breath work that people call breath work, which is like that fast. There's holotropic breath work and types of breath work that are really like focused on not stopping breathing and just keeping going, which I actually do not subscribe to that. This is more of like a restorative yogic, very gentle breath work that honors the body. But what I found after about 4 months, I woke up one morning and I was no longer anxious. And what I mean by that is like I had had this kind of like engine of like, like, I would say it was in my belly, like, and it never stopped. I know people who are not watching this, I'm so sorry. That is so not descriptive, but I'm making this little like engine thing with my
With
fingers.
your hands.
Yeah,
It's
with
like
my
that
hands.
it's like, yes.
And it's like this spinny thing, and I had this in my gut, and I had really come to the point where I was like, "This is just part of what I'm made up of, and that's okay." I had really come to a point where I was okay with that. I wasn't trying to get rid of it. I wasn't trying to change it. It's like, this is part of who I am. And when I woke up and I did not have that, I was like, "What just happened?" So there was a lot of really amazing stuff that came from that breathwork training. And it really actually so it reduced my anxiety. I really felt like I had more capacity to deal with the fact that, oh, my husband's gone for 2 years and I'm raising my child by myself. And here I am doing all this stuff. And it really helped. It really helped with that. And that was also a period of time where I was experiencing a lot of physical pain. Um, and that practice really helped. It really helped to bring that pain level down. And it also gave me the capacity to be like, I need to start strength training, but not in a way that I would normally, which would be like, let's do everything all at once. More like, I don't know. Does that sound familiar to anyone? So just really like the level of strength training I started with was remedial, is what I would say. Remedial, it was embarrassing and it was effective. And it helped. Like, so the breath, then the pain went down, and then the breath, and then the strength training. Like it was all part of the same package. But the breath work was the kind of fulcrum of all of that.
Really powerful. And then, you go on to give it, right? Because you've helped so many people with this, all of the integration of all of these learnings that you've come, maybe they started because you were in a situation yourself where you needed that, you needed something to shift. But then what I really appreciate about you is you take it out and say, okay, well, if this helped me, how might this help somebody else?
Yeah. Well, and I think that also led me to study Yoga Nidra because Yoga Nidra is more comprehensive. Like the breath work is fantastic, but it's embedded in Yoga Nidra, right? So, like, you can get even more bang for your buck from a pain perspective by doing Yoga Nidra because it has the breath included in it. It is a meditation practice. It is a way to foster mindfulness, so, trying these kinds of practices can help to reduce the stress or threat bucket, the danger bucket, and it also is a form of support.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And I think one of the things that I think might be interesting to put in here now is, you were talking about, oh, I really hate a hack culture, right? Do this and then this is your result, right? And I mean, I think a lot of the mindfulness experts in the field, like John Kabat-Zinn, Rick Hansen, even if you go to the self-compassion mindfulness practices with Kristen Neff, a lot of these the point is, the idea is to do it for its own sake, not necessarily for any outcome. But what would you add to that in terms of the whole, do this and then that, the hack culture? What is it that really gets you?
Right. Well, I mean, I'm sure I have said this before, but like when you go on Instagram or you're just out in the wide world of development or self-help or doing things, it's like if you do this, then this will happen. And it's like I think doing things for a specific outcome is like anxiety provoking in and of itself. Because if it doesn't work, then y well, at least if it doesn't work, I'm gonna speak for myself. If something doesn't work and somebody said, "All you need is this one thing," and it doesn't work for me, then somehow that puts the blame on me,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I must have done something wrong. I must not have done this right." And you might keep going back and hitting your head against the same wall over and over again, thinking you're doing something wrong, or that there's nothing in that realm that will support you and help you. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to look at something like from the perspective of can I enjoy this? Can it be a solace for me? Can it be a place I can rest, that I feel good, and maybe letting go of what the outcome might be? Just like with the breath work, like, the anxiety going away, that was like, "What?" I mean, I was shocked, right? But when we're doing something with that focus of like, "I want to fix this," it actually increases our stress bucket in some ways.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And I think the other thing I'd like to add is, um, often when we do, for some people doing these practices, they can cause more anxiety depending on the practice. So, I've experienced that with, doing, a short mindfulness before an event, and somebody being really like, that just made me really anxious. And then feeling really not, do they want to talk about it? Does it make them feel othered because everybody else is like, oh, that was lovely. And so really knowing yourself, because I remember going to some event and they had Kundalini yoga there, and, it was some sort of like like kind of breathing thing, and I was like falling. I just was like, "Yeah, this isn't for me," and I just left. But then I did end up thinking, "Oh, man, I really like yoga. What is wrong with me that I then had that reaction versus, I wonder what got triggered in my body, or I wonder what my body is, what the anxiety is telling me. Maybe this practice is not for me." And so I just want to call that out because I think that a lot of people who try a mindful practice and then end up feeling more anxious than before, it's just worth getting really curious about what could a mindful practice be for them if it's not, a prescribed monitoring, changing your breathing or something like that.
Right, right. I think this is also a good time to bring in the idea that, I mean, not the idea, but just the reality of thinking about regulating your nervous system. So, one of the things that I often say to people is if you are prone to laying on the couch and kind of going limp and like being kind of in a freeze state, then your best option to regulate your nervous system may be movement, like going outside, going for a walk in nature, like doing something active because you are in a particular state of your nervous system. And what you might want to do is lay down and do Yoga Nidra. And that might be lovely. And it might be really helpful to be like, if I just wanna lay still, maybe I need to go for a walk. And if you are a person who tends to get really busy and just wants to keep moving, right? Then laying down can be like you wanna think about that, right? Like if you're activated and you're in fight or flight, then to come down, you probably need to lay down. And it probably is helpful also for you to do movement first, right?
Yeah. Mhm,
Do a
mhm.
little bit of movement first before laying down. And if you are somebody who just wants to lay down and kind of go catatonic, then doing some activity is going to probably be really helpful. So you just want to think about that and how you are responding to your stress bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. I catch myself saying it all the time, and it's yours, but it's run the experiment. How could you just bring some curiosity to what's happening and run the experiment, see what happens?
Right. So when I first started practicing yoga, um, way back in the way back day, I loved it. Like the first time I practiced yoga, I knew it was going to be a really important part of my life. And there was a part of me that resisted it mightily because every time I did yoga, I cried and I hate crying. Like it was so it brought me back into my body and in a way that was my body was trying to protect me. You know what I mean? So, like, recognizing because at the time, I thought to myself, "There's something wrong with me because I have so much resistance to doing something that I really wanna be doing." And that was a protective mechanism. Like, what would have been really great in that particular time would be like because all yoga classes at that time were 75 minutes. You probably remember that. Um, and what would have been really helpful was if somebody said, "I see what's happening with you. Let's do less."
Mm,
You know,
mhm.
let's titrate let's titrate how much you're doing so it feels safer because it didn't feel safe to me to be in a yoga class with my this was a college, and I would burst into tears. I would just be weeping because there was so much accumulated stress in my body. Um, so I wanna say that too. I think we're getting off track, and look at this, we're already over 30 minutes. Oh, we could just go on and on. This is such a big topic, isn't it?
It is. It's a number of topics, right? It could, because we're talking about pain and mindfulness. So, I mean, you could do whole sessions on pain and you could do, right? But what about if we touch on the lessons that we identified coming in? And actually, I think we've talked through most of them. So we'll just talk through. Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
So, number one, mindfulness meditation can take many forms, right? It could be a walking mindfulness. It could be a visualization, which, as Nona said, could be like a yoga nidra, or you could do a visualization that is, you're on your favorite beach or meadow or whatever, whatever it is. There are so many different visualizations you could do. It could be laying down, it could be sitting, you could be doing yoga nidra, you could be doing a loving kindness meditation, you could be doing also, there's so many different resources out there. So it's about experimenting and find the avenue that works for you. And what I would say is 1 minute of mindfulness is better than a 15-minute practice you don't do. Right. So find some
For sure.
so find something, even if it's, really small, and build up. So,
I mean, I think to build on that too, I would say again, like, what do you enjoy? Like finding something because sometimes I think mindfulness can become like, oh, I have to do mindfulness because it's good for me. And of course, it has the potential to shift so much, like decrease our pain, support our body. Like, yes, I get it, but do what is pleasurable for you because you're way more likely to do it.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, that was still like part 1. Okay, part 2, so is not being attached to outcomes. Like when we are doing something, I mean, anything can happen, right? Like, I mean, this is the thing, like anything can happen when we're doing something like this. And so fixating on one particular outcome, I think like one, it creates anxiety in the practice, but two, it also cuts you off from the possibility of what might be if you can really lean into the practice and enjoy it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, love that. And then the third one is really, no, no, this should be you, is recognizing your range of motion and listening to your body, running the experiment. So, Nona's invite is yes, please be an underachiever here. It goes back to what I said earlier in the recording, right? I know you can do more, but can you do less? So what would that look like for you?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think your example of the, breathing and, like, trying to breathe when people ask you to breathe deeply, like, your inclination, if you're anything like Helen and I, might be like and, like, you get really stressed out about it, and you're gonna make your breath as big as possible, and it's like, "No."
Yes. Yeah.
Let it be easy. Like, like, we wanna create ease in the breath, and that alone will increase your capacity over time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because that range of motion thing is interesting because whether you're talking about breath or the body, that in and of itself helps your nervous system to settle down and feel safe, right? So if you're not like, your nervous system,
You have to watch the video for these expressions.
your nervous system like really says, "Oh, she's not going to hurt me. She's not going to push me. I don't need to put my bracing up." You know? So it actually is so powerful to be in a smaller range of motion and like it's like your body is like yeah, it's like the soft animal body. It's like holding a baby bird. I love that analogy, like, how can you, like, be as gentle with yourself as you would be with a baby bird and just see what happens in your body?
Yes, and I wonder if it's just a cultural thing that it's even when we were doing the movements yesterday and you were like, "Helen, is that still in your like, is there any pain there?" I was like, "Yeah, mhm," because it's like, push against the pain, like, "Grr," and there's something about that that is it feels very countercultural to me to go, "Oh, wait, oh, I'm gonna hold my hand like it's a baby bird." That feels so sweet, but it's not what I think I grew up with necessarily, or not the messaging that's out there. Like, it's like, "Tough it out."
Oh, absolutely. But aren't there enough places in our life where we really have to do that? But when we are being with our own body that's in pain and we're being mindful and like it's okay to be like, yeah. And what if that creates more resilience and more capacity if we can take those moments to be that tender with ourselves? Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful, and I couldn't agree more.
Mm. This has been such a great conversation. I hope you guys will go watch the YouTube video because we are cracking ourselves up over here.
We
So what
totally
are we
are,
talking
and
about next week? This is your specialty.
oh my goodness, next week we are talking about connection, what we know about health and being in connection with others. So we can't wait for that conversation. And also, feel free to check us out on Substack, put comments in. We do respond to comments. We'd love to hear what you want us to be talking about or any comments that you have for us. So you are so welcome to the Autoimmune Campfire, and thank you for listening.
Did you enjoy this campfire conversation? Please rate our podcast wherever you're listening to light the way for others to find the Autoimmune Campfire. The information provided on the Autoimmune Campfire is for educational or informational purposes only. It is not intended nor implied as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always, always consult your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you might have regarding a medical condition or treatment plan. The Autoimmune Campfire does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on this site or podcast. Recording and editing wizardry by Make Your Day Richer. Thanks for joining Helen and I around the campfire.